sugar fairy, and the very first cupcake. Long ago, when the world was painted in muted shades of beige and brown, children lived a life entirely devoid of tiny, manageable bursts of sweetness. They only had plain bread and biscuits to eat, sturdy, honorable, certainly nourishing, but utterly, heartbreakingly uninspired. These were the days when flour was merely a staple, not a vessel for dreams. Birthdays which should have been sparkling explosions of color and excitement were instead quiet, solemn affairs marked by a slightly larger, slightly denser loaf of rye. Picnics were dull, dominated by crumbs and dry, sandy textures that scraped the tongue. The general atmosphere of every celebratory event felt muffled, like music played through a thick woolen blanket, and the deepest, most poignant sign of this flavorless existence was heard in the sigh of the young. Children, bless their pure, pleasure-seeking hearts, often looked at the world and sighed with the heavy disappointment only a child can truly muster. Oh dear, no sprinkles again. This melancholy lament, carried on the faintest currents of wind, traveled far. It drifted past the troposphere, sailed through the velvet expanse of the night, and wafted right up to the celestial residence of the sugar fairy. Up in the candy clouds, a sprawling, fluffy kingdom built on foundations of nougat and walls of spun sugar, the gentle sugar fairy watched. Her home was a delicate manor sculpted from the finest, softest marshmallow. A tower with windows glazed with clear, shimmering rock candy. She watched the world below through one such window, her chin resting on her interwoven hands, a knot of worry tightening in her sweet pink heart. The view was not just of the people, but of their emotions. A gray, sticky cloud of unfulfilled longing hovering just above the rooftops. She saw a little boy try to make a wish over a bland cracker, and his eyes held no hope. She saw a grandmother trying to cheer a grandchild, offer a dry cookie, and the effort felt insufficient, almost sorrowful. "Oh, my sweet stars," she whispered, her voice a delicate chime that made the nearby walls shiver with soft music. "These poor humans need a little joy. They don't just need to eat. They need to celebrate eating. They need a small, perfect moment of private delight, a treasure all their own." The sugar fairy was, after all, the embodiment of tiny pleasures. Her purpose was not to solve grand conflicts or govern kingdoms. Her sacred task was to inject lightness and delight into the mundane. She realized that the people didn't need a huge, intimidating cake, which required a crowd and a ceremony. They needed something individual, something manageable, a personal, portable celebration. A fierce, sweet determination sparked in her eyes. With a resolute push, she moved away from the rock candy window. Her long, sweeping gown, made of the sheerest powdered sugar silk, trailed behind her as she floated down a winding staircase made of striped peppermint stick. She was going to her laboratory, her sanctuary, her birthplace of bliss, her marshmallow kitchen. She decided to bake something new, something soft enough to comfort, sweet enough to surprise, and so full of magical happiness that it would explode onto the tongue like a silent, marvelous firework. It would be a treat that was humble in size, but enormous in spirit. The marshmallow kitchen was a vast, fragrant space, smelling eternally of vanilla extract and warm butter. Giant ladles hung on hooks of polished caramel, and the floor was tiled with checkered white and dark chocolate. The sugar fairy tied her cotton candy apron, a cloud of blue and pink fluff, and began the delicate, meticulous process of gathering the most magical ingredients in the universe. She didn't just grab them, She understood that true magic lay in the consent and the spirit of the components. Every piece had to be given willingly, bringing its own essence of goodness into the final creation. She approached each ingredient not as an object, but as a personality, speaking to it politely with the utmost respect. First, she approached the enormous crystalline silo containing the finest milled dust from a comet's tail, what humans would later call flour. It was so fine, it looked like liquid moonlight. "Excuse me, dear flower," she chimed, her voice low and persuasive. "May I have some of your softness, soft as baby cheeks? I need a tenderness that will cushion the spirit against the harshness of life. I need it to feel like a warm hug, not a chore." The flower sighed a gentle whoosh as a cascade of pure, cushiony powder flowed into her golden measuring cup. It agreed, happy to lend its yielding nature to the cause of comfort. Next, she looked up past the marshmallow ceiling, addressing the immense, silent orb in the night sky. "Glowing moon, would you kindly lend me your round, shiny eggs? I need the yolk of a perfect sphere, the promise of new beginnings, and the binding energy that only a complete, unbroken form can provide." 3 perfect pearlescent spheres glowing with a soft inner luminescence detached from the moon's silver surface and sailed gently down, landing without a crack in her preheated, silver-plated mixing bowl. The sugar fairy then turned to a strange, almost invisible vapor that perpetually wafted around the edges of the candy clouds, the essence of mirth itself. "Little giggle, you elusive, wonderful thing. May I sprinkle some of your sweetness into my bowl? Not the cloying sweetness of sugar, but the kind that bubbles up from surprise and pure, unexpected delight. A shimmering, gaseous wisp of sound, a tiny, high-pitched hee-hee of a baby condensed and settled, a fragrant sweet syrup, into the mixture. It would ensure the final product made people's shoulders shake with silent joy. Then came the most unusual request. She turned to a small, sleepy, and somewhat grumpy figure resting on a shelf made of hardened caramel. It was a miniature, but very real Mr. Dragon, who handled the heating elements for the entire Candy Cloud infrastructure. "Mr. Dragon, my good sir, may I borrow one of your tiny hiccups, if you don't mind? I need a sudden, surprising puff of heat, a momentary explosion of kinetic energy, to ensure the center of my creation is light and airy, not dense and flat." Mr. Dragon grumbled, but being very polite deep down, he conceded. He let out a small, hesitant plume of fire, a quick hiccup that shot a perfect contained burst of warmth into the bowl, activating the nascent lightness. Finally, she extended her hands to the cosmos itself, where millions of pinpricks of light were currently winking. "And twinkling stars, you ancient sources of light and wonder, may I pour just a drop of your sparkling milk? I need the ingredient that carries the memory of eternity, the subtle hint of magic that makes a thing special beyond mere flavor, a trickle of pure effervescent liquid, shimmering with the color of deep space and flecked with gold dust poured into the mixture." This was the true magic, the element of stardust. One by one, the ingredients agreed, happy to help. They understood the gravity of the Sugar Fairy's mission, and they were eager to be transformed. The Sugar Fairy didn't use a mechanical whisk or a powerful churning spell. She stirred them gently in a giant chocolate bowl, using a spoon carved from pure amber. She never rushed, focusing intently on the consistency, the aroma, and the feeling of the batter. All the while she hummed a soft, ancient lullaby tune about the goodness of simple things and the beauty of small acts of kindness. When the batter was ready, it pulsed with a warm, hopeful light. It was divided carefully into tiny, silver-lined paper cups, each one a miniature vessel ready to contain its own personality. Finally, she smiled kindly, a deep, satisfied crease appearing near her eyes, and said, with an air of profound permission, "Bake, my darlings, if you please. Go forth and become the first ambassadors of joy." She slipped the little cups into an oven whose door was made of flawless amber, heated by the polite hiccup of Mr. Dragon. The kitchen filled with a rising crescendo of sound. Poof! Pop! Ping! The sounds of creation, of matter turning into meaning. The oven door opened, not with a burst of heat, but with a sudden, beautiful luminescence. And out tumbled the very first creations. The cupcake. They were miniature masterpieces, each one unique. They had swirling, high-piled hair made of the creamiest, most colorful frosting. Their eyes were bright, questioning jelly beans, and their feet were tiny, polished candy shoes that tapped gently on the chocolate-tiled floor. Their cheeks were as soft as the freshest marshmallows, inviting a gentle squeeze. They were the very essence of the ingredients, soft, round, sweet, and surprising. The first one, the one with the high lemon swirl frosting, bowed low, a tiny, respectful gesture of gratitude, and said politely, "Hello, Mama Fairy." Another, who had eyes of pure emerald jelly beans, shuffled forward and offered a single, perfect rainbow sprinkle, a silent gift. The tiniest one, a little buttercream puff, hopped nervously on its candy shoes and giggled, "Please don't eat me, I'm too ticklish. I am meant for sharing." The sugar fairy clapped her hands, an explosion of pure delight echoing through the kitchen. Tears of sweet, clear nectar formed in her eyes. "Oh, how polite and sweet you are. You are not just food. You are individual little parcels of kindness and light. You shall bring joy to the world, one tiny, happy bite at a time." The moment of their creation was complete. Now came their great commission. The sugar fairy knew they could not simply be left on a dusty road. Their introduction to the world had to be as magical as their birth. She led the cupcake kids to the highest window of the Marshmallow Manor, the one facing the deep, open expanse of the cosmos. She opened her marshmallow window and blew a gentle, powerful kiss that carried all her love, her hope, and her benediction. A soft wind, scented with cinnamon and spun sugar, wrapped around the cupcake kids, lifting them easily. It was the breath of the sugar fairy, and it carried them outside the protective bubble of the candy clouds. Their journey was a ballet of celestial navigation. They floated on great, billowy sugar dust clouds which parted like velvet curtains. They played an ecstatic game of sliding down the vast, arching structures of the rainbows, the colors vibrating as they zipped by. They bounced on the soft yet firm surfaces of the cotton candy stars, which popped inside under their light weight. They rode elongated moonbeams like slides, giggling as they accelerated and decelerated. They twirled through the night sky, their frosting hair catching the starlight, laughing with the joyous chaos of giggly little comets. They weren't just traveling. They were learning to embody lightness, speed, and the sheer delight of movement. This long, spectacular journey was their baptism into the true spirit of celebration. They soared over oceans, watching the waves curl with silent foam. They flew over silent cities whose lights twinkled like their sibling stars. They flew until the wind of the sugar fairy's kiss gently dissipated, and the Earth's magnetic field pulled them softly to their destination. At last they landed softly, silently, like a shower of the finest dust, right on the edge of a small backyard celebration. they found themselves in the middle of a children's birthday party. It was a small affair, the tables set with the sadly predictable dry biscuits and crackers. A hush fell over the small gathering. The children, previously trying their best to look cheerful while nibbling on plain dough, suddenly froze. They stared, their eyes wide, their mouths slightly ajar, reflecting the colors of the Cupcake kids. One little girl, whose expression was a mixture of wonder and disbelief, finally broke the silence, her voice a ready whisper. "Cupcakes with faces." The Cupcake kids, remembering their Mama Fairy's instructions and the magical ingredients that made them, behaved with perfect, innate grace. They bowed politely, a gentle tilt of their frosting-crowned heads, and spoke with a collective, sweet chime. "Would you care for a sweet surprise? We are here to make things smaller, brighter, and perfectly personal." The children cautiously, then eagerly reached out. As their small fingers touched the soft, yielding cake and the creamy, cool frosting, a small, subtle current of magic, the stardust and the giggle, flowed from the Cupcake kids to the children. The children didn't just taste sweetness, they tasted joy. Their eyes widened, their sighs were replaced with gasps, and the previously dull picnic table became the epicenter of an explosion of color and excitement. From that day on, the Cupcake kids and all their subsequent generations, made by the children themselves, inspired by the magic, visited every town and village. They became the secret, sweet helpers of the world. At night, they were seen sliding down rainbows, their tiny candy shoes kicking up sugary sparks. They would quietly sneak into kitchens, leaving behind subtle but undeniable evidence of their passage: a perfectly fluffed tub of frosting, a small, bright cluster of sprinkles, and an inexplicable feeling of warmth and smiles left on the faces of all who woke up. Up in the candy clouds, the sugar fairy felt the wave of delight wash back to her. She pressed her hands together, a gesture of profound contentment and relief. The gray cloud of human disappointment had thinned, replaced by shimmering, pastel-colored threads of tiny, happy moments. "Yes, my little darlings have reached the children," she whispered, her voice husky with love. "Joy has found its way to Earth, and it's being carried in a convenient, handheld form." And so, the very first cupcake became a forever treat. Not a grand, intimidating feast, but a personal, manageable indulgence. They were tiny, magical bundles of kindness, carrying a sprinkle of stardust, a whisper of a giggle, and the softness of a baby's cheek in every single delightful bite. They were the edible symbol that even the smallest things can hold the greatest magic, promising that happiness, in the form of a beautifully dressed miniature cake, would always be within reach.